Hi, everyone. I'm Sam King from the Yale Forum on Religion and Ecology, and today I'm excited to be joined by my friend and colleague, Tyler Mark Nelson. So thanks so much for chatting with us today.
Yeah, glad to be here, Sam. Thanks for having
Absolutely.
me.
Absolutely. So Tyler Mark Nelson is an educator, eco-theologian, and artist exploring the ways that humans make sense of their creaturely existence in relation to the more than human world and the divine. As a research associate with the Forum, he compiled scientific, legal, and social research on the sentience of non-human animals and plants. Currently, he is assisting with preparations for the launch of the exciting Living Earth Community Project. Tyler earned an MDiv in Religion and Ecology from Yale Divinity School, where his research combined theological imagination, animal studies, eco-spirituality, and environmental justice. Tyler, appreciate you joining us to tell a little bit of your story today.
Yeah. Um, well, I come from the woods and waters of Minnesota. I think it's
Hmm.
valuable to begin from the place that I came from. And so Minnesota just holds a really special place in my heart. It's a state that has something like 7 bioregions. So we've got original prairies, we've got deep boreal forests, savanna, bogland, bluff country. So it's a state that I really came to love as a child. My family was a big travel family. We would pile into the family van and having our state park passport, we would go to all the different state parks in Minnesota and get to know these bioregions pretty intimately. Um, I did the Junior Rangers Club too. So we'd have little assignments like go catalog these 5 birds and draw them in your little journal. And what insects are you finding in the water today? So from an early childhood, I just came to develop this sense of like attuning to the world beyond just myself and my family, um, and eventually beyond the human, coming to see these other creatures as subjects in themselves who have their own lives and their own characteristics and so on. Um, yeah, the in Minnesota, there's a particular place that I call the home of my heart. It's the northeast corner of the state. It's called the Arrowhead region, and it's the North Shore of Lake Superior as well. So mining country, deep forested wilderness country, indigenous country, and from an early childhood later on living there for a while in the town of Duluth. And then now every time I come back, I make sure to go visit there. It's just this special place that I have found over the years is like grasps me at my core.
Hmm.
I could say more on that, but maybe for now, Minnesota is just a special place that
Hmm.
from the early years until even now as I'm approaching 37, it's a state that when I need to remember who I am, when I need to replace myself in my own story, I go back to Minnesota. I go to the North Woods. I go to the Boundary Waters canoe area and just spend some time grounding as a creature. Yeah.
I love that. And thank you for giving us such a vivid glimpse of these areas that have nourished you over the years and kind of, as you said, grafted the core of your being, I think you said.
Grasped. Yeah.
Grasp.
Like it's holding me.
Ah.
I beheld it, but
Mm,
I'm being held by it too.
mm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really powerful visual. And I'm curious to hear about, yeah, how you sort of moved from these early experiences of the more than human world and these deep senses of attunement and connection to the larger community of life
Mm.
into your studies and practices of religion and ecology. Like, how did you
Mm.
really bring together those parts of yourself and really bring them ultimately into a graduate program?
Mm. Yeah, good question. Um, boy, I so many places to begin. But some of the key points I want to hit are I returned to school, started a bachelor's from scratch at age 28. I had originally been a student at an art school up in the north, studying graphic design, studio sculpture. I was into photography and so on. But there was this thing called the recession that hit,
Mhm.
and that changed many people's plans, including my own. So I went into horticulture for a number of years. Worked at one of the largest greenhouses in Minnesota. Spent every day around plants and people, and from there continued my outdoor recreation. So hiking and backpacking, camping. Um, I would go off into the Rockies for 3 or 4 weeks at a time and just live out of my car and my backpack because I wanted to be around the more than human world and just see what happens when I'm imagining myself not as, capital H human in nature, but instead like lowercase c, creature among creatures within creation, or animal among animals and insects. A citizen of the flora, fauna, and fungi kingdoms, we could say. So that's sort of like what was gestating at the time. I had these questions that had, the seeds were planted in my childhood about these relationships between human and more than human, human to the divine, more than human to the divine. But I didn't have the words to articulate that. And I didn't really know how to formulate those questions. So my curiosity got the better of me, and I said, I'm going back to school. I'm gonna study theology and spirituality and Christian church history, because that's what I knew at the time. And so I had this really wonderful mentor, and I consider him a good friend now, Dr. Jonathan Moo, out in Washington State, who really helped me to form this vocabulary and these frameworks of thought in eco-theology and the ways that there's a broad spectrum of Christian expressions across the past 2,000 years and across the globe, across social locations and so on, that that actually do engage the more than human world. They're not the sort of loud American evangelicals who deny climate change, or I think the strategy now is acknowledging that climate change exists, but saying that it's natural and they're delaying it. That there was a whole world beyond what I knew from my own religious upbringing, where folks were asking questions, and they did have resources to tap into, texts and traditions and theologies and so on. So once I got my undergrad in theology, focusing on environmental studies, I then said, all right, what's the next stop? Master's, religion and ecology, eco-theology, somewhere that offers the resources that I'll need to engage this type of work, but also a place that values these sort of questions, a place that allows one to ask sometimes very challenging questions. And at this time, the pandemic's in full bore. I am by myself with my wife and our greenhouse plants. And I had a lot of time to just look around and see what people are doing right now and where did they go to school, or what programs might offer me these things. Long story short, I ended up at Yale Divinity School. Some of the things that attracted me, first off, Mary Evelyn Tucker and John Grimm. These founders, these forerunners, these forethinkers of religion and ecology just had demonstrated to me what it can look like to have big conversations across multiple communities and thought partners while asking these questions. and it was funny. In my undergrad, I'd go through the library, and I knew where my eco-theology and my environmental ethics sections were in the book stacks. And I'd flip through books and see a foreword by Mary Evelyn Tucker. And then I'd grab another one, Mary Evelyn Tucker, grab another one, John Grimm. So I wanted to know, who are these people who are engaging the same people and asking similar questions? And then, Yale with its religion and ecology program. The Div Farm was an exciting idea here. And then again, just the whole range of faculty. Dr. Willie Jennings, someone who also is doing work on creatureliness, but doing so in an expansive way that examines race and embodiment and the connections of those things to land, as well as colonialism and power structures. And again, folks that are, I think I was just looking for people to teach me how to ask these questions better and to provide me with tools and a vocabulary, and also the affirmation to continue exploring these questions about the human, the more than human, and the divine, and how those interrelate.
Such a rich sort of portrayal of all these tributaries that brought you into the community here at Yale Divinity School.
That's a good word for it, tributaries.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, between your background in horticulture and your immersive experience in the outdoors of Minnesota and your religious upbringing and how you've sort of metabolized all those different parts of yourself and really brought them so immersively into this community.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, Tyler, to hear.
Composted.
Yeah,
Compost.
There you go.
Quick aside, quick story. When I was doing my undergrad in theology, I worked for the grounds department of the university, and I was the worm guy. Nice. So I was the specialist who was operating the vermiculture program.
Nice.
And so for those who don't know, vermiculture is a way of working with particular kinds of worms and then feeding them your food excess, different kind of organic materials, and then the worms break it down. And we were working with a grant from PepsiCo to move away from synthetic chemicals on the grounds and instead using all the excess food from the cafeteria and local businesses to create organic compost. So we had this massive industrial bin filled with probably a few thousand pounds of worms in this process of breaking down matter. At the top, and all your food chunks and cardboard and whatnot, but at the bottom was just this rich black gold, which was worm droppings, but that contained such life. It was filled with such good nutrients that we would cut off the bottom few inches and then prepare it and then spread it across the flower beds and the grounds. But what I loved is that somebody had appropriated, they didn't steal, but they appropriated a sign from the theology department and posted it above this worm bin. And it simply read theology with an arrow pointing down at the worm bin. And when I first saw that, I thought, oh, that's interesting. So there's something there. But over the years, as I've chewed on that, I've thought of how so much of our work is composted from the lives of those before us, human and other than human. It's composted from our dreams and hopes of the past that might not have led to something in their own, but they were not lost. They were simply broken down and then turned into something one way or another that is now nourishing our present quests. And so you use the word tributaries, and I love that language. And I wanted to add compost. I think so much of what we're doing in new fields like religion and ecology, which also happen to have deep histories, what we're doing often is in the dark. It's
Mm,
often
mm,
processes that we don't see. I
mhm.
didn't see those worms for 4 feet of the process over several months, but I saw what I had put into it, and
Yeah.
I saw what emerged from it,
Mhm.
and how
Mm,
that was able to nourish
mm,
existing projects.
mm,
So just this, I think what I'm getting at is that this comfort with not knowing,
mm, mm.
especially in academic spaces that prioritize certainty, and
Right.
cultures that prioritize possessing knowledge,
Mm,
owning knowledge.
yeah.
Paulo Freire speaks about, some who act as if they're libraries or possessors or banks of knowledge, and students and learners are kind of at at their feet just hoping for drops.
Mhm.
But instead, if we move away from that hierarchy
Yeah.
and just recognize there's processes going on that um, are emerging that we don't always know,
Mm,
and just running with it, seeing what happens, and trusting these processes.
mm, mm. Totally. And I appreciate what you were saying about just befriending uncertainty, learning to ask better questions.
Mm.
And certainly, as we think about our own planetary moment, there is so much
Mm.
uncertainty around our climate emergency and widespread political upheaval. Where we have trouble knowing exactly how the path ahead will look. But I
Mm.
think in an emerging field like religion and ecology, we're able to thread together these different ways of knowing, different
Mm.
disciplines for understanding our larger context within the Earth community, and
Mm.
to imagine what a more flourishing future might look like on this planet. So, Tyler, I'd love to hear
Mm.
just a little bit more about what your studies looked like at YDS and how you took those questions that you brought from your vermicompost experience and
Yeah.
brought them to alive in the context of your studies.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Um, I'm grateful that this campus did not call me the worm guy. The undergrad, I was worm guy. So I'm glad
Nice.
that's done. But I think I've become creature guy at this point. Would you say that's kind of
Yeah, I
tracks?
like that. We love our invertebrate friends, but you certainly are very connected to the animal kingdom and well beyond invertebrates alone. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's I joke because creatureliness was one of the central themes of my studies at YDS.
Mm,
Um, I came in there and realized within the first semester I could run in so many directions. I need almost a guiding question.
mm,
Nothing too strict that I'm confined to it, but
mm,
something that can be expansive enough to let me explore.
mm,
And that question was, how can we humans be good creatures among other creatures, co-inhabiting creation, beloved by a just creator
mm,
in a time of disastrous anthropogenic decreation? So you get this theme of creatureliness, create, creator, creation. Um, but that gave me enough space that I could
mm,
explore seemingly disparate topics and yet draw them into this conversation.
mm,
So YDS, I think my first year was really marked by exploring climate grief and climate anxiety. As someone whose life has been marked by depression and anxiety since second grade, that's just something I know, and I recognized how much the poly crisis is affecting younger generations, frontline communities, and frankly, folks who don't even recognize the weight that's churning within them right now. So focused on climate grief and anxiety, um, as well as the idea of wilderness. So going back to Minnesota and the boundary waters and wilderness. What is wilderness as a myth that's been used by spiritual traditions for thousands of years? What is wilderness as
mm,
a scientific category that's used for experiments and data tracking and learning? what is wilderness as a legal concept? The 1964 Wilderness Act. What does that say wilderness is, and how does it impact people? Wilderness as a tool of the state to erase the history and the ongoing presence of indigenous peoples. So wilderness was just such a great topic for me to begin flexing these muscles and trying out these tools, because it got to the heart of how do humans perceive the world around them and then find their place within that world. How do they, what stories are they telling about this ecosystem? And then how do they see themselves placed within that story? So that was year one. And then year two and beyond, I think, is really where I started to find my grounding in environmental justice. I grew up going to national parks. I had a childhood that was privileged by a loving family that enjoyed road trips, and we'd go to the Badlands, we'd go to Yellowstone, we would go to the Rockies, and so on. And then growing up with my care for the earth, I was steeped in the American environmental tradition, or in environmentalisms, plural. But I came to see the problems that lie within those traditions, and so grateful for faculty and students and friends who we would have conversations that challenged me to look beyond this sort of lineage from romanticism and deism, moving through to the 20th century environmentalism and so on, looking beyond that and seeing this plurality of approaches to humans responding to the needs of other humans, but also the needs of the earth community. So, Howard Thurman speaking about, combining this sort of Christian nature mysticism with racial, dealing with the racialized hatred in the early 20th century, or Martin Luther King Jr., right? And the seeing class divisions, race divisions entangled with ecological devastation. Warren County environmental justice movement in the early 80s. You got this beautiful lineage of prophetic social Black teachings that are then channeled into battles against the state of North Carolina, or corporations in North Carolina dumping cancer-causing waste in predominantly Black communities. So just this idea that religion and ecology, for me, took on new tones and layers and a depth that hadn't been there before, when I started to unlearn certain ways and learn from others who saw this intersection of race, class, and power structures with the more than human community. Then animals. Can't talk about creatureliness without animal studies, which I'll be quick on. If humans are the driving force behind climate change, pollution, ocean acidification, environmental injustices, and so on, I wanted to peel back some layers and ask what stories are being told about the human and our place amongst the earth community, and how does religion play into that? The great chain of being is one such story that has lasted far too long, where humans are separate from and above the rest of the earth community, having a godlike dominating power position over all else. And then even within that, humans are stratified based off of different social factors. And so I got into post-humanism and animal studies, and looking at ways of questioning what it is to be human, what it is to be human as an animal that evolved from the same lineage as so many other species, and ultimately all species and life. How can we think about spirituality is in that case? Are humans the only spiritual animal, or are there other forms of spirituality? Are humans the only species that thinks about morality, justice, reciprocity, or are there other creatures that do? Humans feel emotions, other species feel emotions. How does that impact our ethics and how we relate to and try to tamper our own powers and capacities so that we're thinking more in line of kinship or multi-species community, multi-species politics, even in that. Yeah. So that, like I said, that's where I really found my footing, and spirituality and these questions I was asking about creatureliness, being a good creature amongst all life. It took form in that. And so I'm really grateful for those challenging, difficult, but incredibly valuable years.
Yeah, thank you for sharing the sort of wider arc of your experience and all these touch points in studying eco-theology and climate grief, studying environmental justice and racial justice and animal studies, and how seeing ourselves as creatures among creatures provides an enlarged horizon for how we understand ourselves and deepen our empathy into the interior lives of other beings, and really explore all these profound insights that are emerging from so many of the contemporary sciences around the communication capacities and the capacity for feeling, the capacity for taking care of one's offspring among Douglas fir trees, and the profound just complexity we are continuing to explore in the more than human world. So Tyler, I'd love to hear more in how you've really seen the implications of these studies in practice. So we talked a lot about the academic study of religion and ecology and some of the areas of focus that you've had. Where do you see this actually mobilizing as a moral force in the world? Like, in light of our climate crisis and mass extinction, our environmental justice tragedies that we're seeing, whether it's in Warren County or Cancer Alley in Louisiana, how do we actually bridge the theories around religion and ecology with inspired action?
Great question. Something that I've always attempted to do is to not lose connection to my own roots within Christian religion, Christian spirituality, and theology. I say that I am intentionally ecumenical. What do I say about that? It's been a moment. Deliberately Christian, but intentionally ecumenical, and beyond that, even interreligious. So, and what by doing that, knowing my roots, continuing to be nourished by those roots, while also engaging and learning from others, co-creating with others. It's a way that I think, well, just looking at this beautiful stand of trees and shrubs and the billions of microbial life in the soil and the way that relationships work together, there can be uniqueness and difference while also a sort of unity together. And so not conformity, but a unity. So I preface that just to, I think it's important so that folks don't feel like they have to lose their own unique traditions or spiritualities, their own cultural ties. Challenge them, absolutely. Dig beneath the soil and see what's feeding them. But I think that's okay to hold on to a number of our roots. So to your question, I'm so energized by interfaith movements. I think of interfaith power and light, which has a presence across the nation. I think of green faith, down in, I think they're based in New York City, but they have a global presence now. And Green Faith is this climate activist organization that welcomes people of all religious and spiritual and cultural traditions for engaging in climate activism. They also sort of align their actions and their campaigns with different holy days and holy seasons, which I think is a really lovely strategy to help folks recognize the potential within their own traditions to show up right now. It helps connect them to their own sacred texts and belief systems, and unites that to our pressing issues today. So, for instance, I organized a group of grad students here to go down to Manhattan for a nonviolent action at BlackRock headquarters. BlackRock being one of the greatest, if not the greatest, investor of fossil fuel accounts in the world. They're just a behemoth of financial power that is backing the most extractive, exploitative industries on Earth. So marching alongside Sikhs and Muslims and folks who are practicing Jews, or you go down the list, interfaith chaplains, interspiritual leaders, Quakers, you go down the list. I feel weird sometimes listing folks because we're not collecting, but we're collaborating. Yeah, and so just to see what can happen when we get all hands on deck. If the ship is leaking and at risk of sinking, we need everyone aboard. We need everybody aboard to be taking part. So those are just two examples stateside, but we could look at what indigenous nations are doing at Standing Rock, Line 3. Right now, there's a huge push against copper sulfide mining in the boundary waters in northeast Minnesota, which has environmental groups rooted in sort of this US popular environmental lineage alongside the indigenous communities up there, alongside faith communities, all trying to come together to message and act against these transnational conglomerates that are trying to poison our water systems with mining strategies that have a 100% failure rate. So if we look beyond the states, we could, oh man, there's so many examples that encourage me. I just love learning from and celebrating the vast creative ways that people around the world are responding at this intersection of religion and ecology.
Totally.
And where it can surprise people that they are even doing that themselves. Sometimes I don't think people know that they're engaging in spiritual ecological work when they might not have ever strung those two words together in their life. Or the only times they've heard those two words, spirit and ecology, or religion and ecology, it's been to emphasize a division between the two. An example of this is, and forgive me if I'm running along with that.
Hey, keep going.
Okay. The tributaries are pouring out. Yeah. I was down at the Moth Festival of Ideas at NYU Law. Moth, short for more than human life. And it's just this multi-day gathering of lawyers from around the world, legal scholars, journalists, artists. There were some tribal leaders from Ecuador. There were filmmakers. You go down the list. There were people from all sorts of disciplines, but there was no religious or spiritual, at least formal religious or spiritual presence. When folks learn that I did eco-theology, they're like, that's cool, but why are you here? Like, what interest what of religion and ecology could interest you here? But the more that we would get into our conversation, the more they would realize, oh, I think I'm doing religion and ecology.
Mm,
I think the reason why I'm engaging in my line of work is because there are certain spiritual dimensions that motivate me to press forward,
mm,
but I never associated that with the conservation science I'm doing, or with the legal frameworks that I'm seeking to adapt.
mm,
So it was really fun
mm,
to be amongst this
mm,
incredibly interdisciplinary group of people, and I almost felt like a spy, going undercover and saying like, do you know what you're doing? Like, what is this religion and ecology? Is this eco-spirituality through your own art practice? And by the end of the conversations, I think most people said, yes, I
mm,
guess I am doing that. So yeah, there's so much to be encouraged by and celebrate today, which
mm,
is an important spiritual practice in itself, in a time when we
mm,
can feel the weight of impending collapse
mm,
and death dealing industry.
mm. Totally. And I'm glad you're highlighting all these modes of creativity that are emerging out of the rubble of
Mm,
so much collapse, as you said, and so much difficulty in the collective, because times of breakdown are often simultaneously times of immense creativity. I mean, if we look at the history of life on Earth, we certainly see that very clearly.
mm,
Just being at the Peabody Museum here at Yale yesterday and learning about the asteroid hitting the Yucatan Peninsula 65 or so million years ago,
right.
wiping out all the dinosaurs, most of the photosynthetic plants, but also simultaneously giving rise to the mammalian lineage to really
Mm,
flourish in that event. And really thinking from an ecological perspective about what creativity is emerging right now out
mm,
of
mm,
the very challenging realities we read on the news every day. And so in that spirit, Howard, I'd love to, as we come to a close, hear a little bit more about this ongoing project that we're collaborating on and working on with the forum on the Living Earth community, because I
mm,
know you did the lion's share of curation with Oliver Mesmer of this
mm,
bibliography on differentiated sentience
mm,
and on earth spiritualities, in really helping to give us a sense for the livingness, the vitality of the earth's systems.
mm,
And
mm.
yeah, tell us a little bit more about that project and what has excited you.
Yeah, gladly. And I'm so glad that you named Oliver. He did such incredible work on this project. I tended to stay on the differentiated sentience piece,
Mm-hmm,
the sentience of the more than human, and Oliver tended to stay more on the earth spirituality. And
mm-hmm,
so it's so much credit to him, and just another human who's exploring what it is to be a good creature,
mm-hmm,
and modeling several ways of doing so.
mm-hmm,
You
mm-hmm,
know, yeah, this project, as the best projects do, came about, I think, from a shared meal with Mary Evelyn and John and yourself and our loved ones. Um, and we were discussing animal studies and, of course, religion and ecology and the development of the field. And um, from this shared meal came the inauguration of the Living Earth community, which is not a new concept, right? That's a Thomas Berry phrase, if I'm not
mm-hmm,
mistaken.
mm-hmm,
Living Earth community. There are other giants across traditions who think of subjectivity amongst the Earth community. So it's this way of drawing together these different strings of viewing the more than human world, and the ways that humans make sense of that through spirituality. Um, Boy, I could go on and on about this. I'm taking a moment to think of where to go next, because I'm so excited by this
mm-hmm,
project. I think it's I think it'll be a gift to people who are asking questions about humanity, animality, how to make sense of this time of polycrisis, and then how to relate to the world around us when our sort of relational ideologies or relational structures have proven themselves to fall short, or proven themselves to lead to many of the crises that we're facing today. So I kind of view this differentiated sentience component as mapping the landscape of scientific and legal and some social literature. Of course, there's the global jurisprudence element too, which dives further into the legal. But as far as more than human sentience goes, I guess what encourages me is that we're finding so much within the scientific world that I guess is confirming what many have already intuited or known through different ways of knowing. So and the I think the influence that this will have on especially the Western world will be huge, because for better and for worse, folks in Western societies, I think, tend to ascribe to, again, this certainty mindset. They want certainty about something. They want to have a nugget of knowledge to possess and say, this is fact, or this is truth, or this is something because of this empirical evidence, or because science, right? And I love science, don't get me wrong on that. The many expressions of knowing, but to have this resource that draws together literature on, vertebrates and invertebrates, literature on fungi, the microbial world, and to see how different scientific approaches are arriving at I think resonant conclusions that indigenous peoples through the ages and different religious and spiritual folks through the ages had already been, I guess, embodying in their relational structures, their communities, their sense of humans among the more than human. And so this just adds one more huge voice to the conversation that I think many people ascribe a greater amount of authority to. And by drawing it all in one place, this beautiful website that we'll be launching soon, that'll reach a part of the human that needs also to be reached. And on that note too, if I can just say, the art there, the images are, I'm so grateful that we're including that. If we're talking about reaching the whole person, but recognizing that different approaches can connect with portions of a person, rarely the whole human. Incorporating photos of the more than human world, but also humans engaging that world, I think is also going to touch a part of our audience that graphs and data and even stories themselves might not reach. I think art is just as valuable a conversation partner in this as the plurality of voices that we've already mentioned or alluded to. So having scientific literature, earth spiritualities, earth jurisprudence, as well as just beautiful photos. I think this will be this will be a valuable research resource for folks.
Yeah, totally. I second that, and the wealth of resources, not just information, but also inspiration for a sense of awe and wonder of the creativity that abounds on our planet,
Yeah.
and to find a way to kind of thread that together and begin and deepen a conversation that is both, we are extending to the more than human world, but the more than human world is inviting us into, certainly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
And it's,
go ahead.
if I could say a bit more on that, I think what this will do is show people that the conversation is ongoing, and questions that were laughed at a couple decades ago are now some of the central questions being asked by different disciplines. For instance, Thomas Nagel wrote, I think 1974, an article about, what is it like to be a bat? But this was published in a serious academic scholarly periodical, and folks laughed at him. Like, what are you talking about? Here we're dissecting theories and going this serious academic scholarship, and you're asking what it is to be a bat. But now in so many scientific fields, as well as other academic fields, that's the question. What is the inner life of an elephant? Oh, elephants, we've learned that elephants actually recognize one another and have names for them. So in a sense, elephants recognize subjectivity within their own species. Oh, fascinating. I don't think people would have taken the question, like, do elephants care about each other's names seriously a few decades ago? Large language models and AI learning is being used to try to understand the language of sperm whales through Project SETI. So a number of decades ago, even I would imagine even 10 years ago, that question would not have been taken seriously by the majority of folks. And yet now we're at a really remarkable point where I believe Project SETI has arrived at a sort of rudimentary alphabet for sperm whales. So again, a differentiated sentience resource is mapping the landscape to show the different pathways of inquiry, as well as the discoveries that the scientific practice or the scientific way of knowing is coming upon. And then by bringing in earth spiritualities and the broader religion and ecology field, we're able to then introduce that landscape or overlay pathways on that landscape and see where others have already trodden that and have already come to an understanding of being and an understanding of relationship with the more than human world.
Totally. And I love how you're honoring both those lineages, right? The profound, groundbreaking discoveries of contemporary science, and also the deep cultural wisdom from across our planet that has informed really deep modes of relationality and reciprocity with the more than human world. We look at the Sarvisberry by Robin Wall Kimmerer, drawing her Potawatomi wisdom to think about, these different modes of reciprocity and attunement that have been around far longer than the modern scientific enterprise. Although science is obviously giving us so much detail and profound insight into the dynamics of sperm whales or elephants, etc.
Right.
Tara, as we come to a close here in our conversation, which could go on for days, weeks, months.
It's been going on for years, man. I love it.
I love it. Yeah. We'd love to hear you reflect for a prospective student. Like, if you're a student who is curious about this emerging field of religion and ecology and interested in perhaps studying in a program like Religion and Ecology at Yale Divinity School, perhaps even doing the joint degree program between the Divinity School and School of the Environment, what would you say to a prospective student?
Yeah, great. I would say come join. One piece of advice would be have some guiding questions. Like I came in and the seasons when I found myself beginning to burn out, or when I found myself almost swimming in the amount of content I was dealing with, are the seasons that I had lost my guiding question. And so just by having, like, remembering your purpose for being here, but allowing that purpose to be reshaped and reformed, composted, right? Composted as you go. The other thing too, a big struggle of mine, and I know that there are many who have shared that, is this fact that religion and ecology is still a young field. And while in the academic world and the ordained world of ministry or religious service, there are some places for that, there's a massive expanse in the middle or beyond those two that is still being explored. So what I've encountered is many people who are at organizations that are interested in who are interested in folks who are specialized or trained in particular areas of religion and ecology. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard them say, our organization needs someone like you, or our organization needs work that your colleague is doing, but we don't yet have a position. We don't yet have a vision for what that looks like to introduce it into our work. And so, and again, this, I'm talking about probably scores of conversations I've had over the years with alumni, with scholars in the field, with ministers in the field, and then other organizations who everyone has this sense that what we're doing is necessary and valuable right now to meet the moment. And yet the institutions are not yet ready. Many of the institutions are not yet ready. But we're seeing steps being taken. We're seeing people willing to take a risk on this, to open up space, to allow for those questions to be asked, and to, I think, honor all that religious and spiritual traditions can bring into ecological work, as well as all that the ecological, the earthly, the soil boundness of our bodies, that these ways of thinking and being can help religious and spiritual folk to navigate these times and reclaim, reconstitute from their own lineage to show up and love their neighbors, human and not human. Yeah. And then I think the last thing I would say is, in line with this general theme of creatureliness, is you are a creature who is limited and finite and embodied, bound by space and time and energy. And so don't burn out. Don't burn out. Like, it's not worth it. Recognize your capacity in every season. I have been calling it in my own journaling the circumstances of the season. So when I notice a change of season, or when I notice myself beginning to lose energy, I ask, what are the circumstances of my season? What am I agreeing to? What am I committing myself to? And what are the good things that I really like that I'm going to have to say no to, so I can say yes to these commitments? If we try to go beyond our own finiteness, our own embodied abilities, and if your cup is empty, you can't give drink to others. And so keep your cup filled. Find the ways that you fill your cup. I'm thankful I took a course on the Sabbath my first semester here, and Sabbath is all about. There's multiple ways of understanding Sabbath, but the one that I'm inclined towards is Sabbath as rest, but rest as restoration. So we're not resting in the ways that lead to consumption
Hmm.
or I mean, leisure is good. I think leisure and especially play are
Hmm.
incredibly important. I think play is just part of being an animal,
Hmm.
being a creature. But rest that is binging or consuming, but not like life-giving,
Hmm.
is not actual rest.
Hmm.
So learn what restores you, what rejuvenates you, and prioritize that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Such an important reminder for all of us to keep our cups full and
Mhm.
yeah, to keep tending to our well-being as we also seek to help others find hope and purpose and inspiration to participate in what Thomas Berry calls the great
Mhm.
work
Yeah.
of leading toward a more flourishing planetary future for life.
Yeah.
So Tyler, thanks so much for chatting with me today, and thank you everybody for listening, and
Mm.
yeah, just for offering so much drawn from your depth of wisdom and experience to all those who will hopefully follow.
Thank you, Sam. It's been a treat to have this conversation and to share the conversation with others. And I just encourage everyone to, be a good creature.
Mm,
Love your creaturely neighbors, love your creaturely self,
mm,
and celebrate that. Thank you.
absolutely. Thanks so much, Tyler.
All right, brother.